Welcome to a special episode of Inside the Village across the Village Media Network and available wherever you get your favorite podcast. Canadians head to the polls this coming Monday in what many are calling the most important election of our lifetime. Today, we're very pleased to be joined by the Liberal leader and Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Mr. Carney, we appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Thanks for having me, Scott and Michael.
All right, let's get right to it. We've got lots of serious questions, but I want to start with hockey. It's no secret that you're a huge fan of the game. You played goal at Harvard. The shots that you take between the pipes must pale in comparison to the ones that you're facing now in the political arena.
Well, the difference I'd say is that you're facing out towards the puck in hockey. And in the political arena, they come from all sides. And actually, normally, your own team doesn't turn around and shoot on you in hockey. I mean, I've had it, maybe in Pee Wee it happened once, but so it is different, but it's a bit of preparation.
That's great. Well, I kind of feel right at home here, Mr. Carney. We're at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie.
Please.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
We're at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie. Back in Hamilton, when I grew up in university, I worked at a steel plant there. I'll give the shout out to Taylor Steel in Hamilton, where I was for 5 summers. So that's why we hear a bit of noise in here today. Obviously, the place is still in operation. As we sit here today, it's April 25th. It's 3 days before Canadians head to the polls. And I think the choice is pretty stark, right? There's a fourth straight Liberal term, or this promise of change that Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives are selling to Canadians, promising Canadians. For all the undecided voters who are watching this interview today, why should they choose you and your party?
Yeah, I think I'd reframe it a bit, if I may. Well, a lot, actually. I'm here for change. I'm not a career politician. Pierre Poilievre is a career politician. And I wasn't in this world. It's really actually, it's 3 months and 10 days. Since I put my hand up and started running for Liberal leader. I did because, and I'm still here, because of the scale of the crisis we're facing. In many respects, we're at ground zero of the crisis here in the Soo, and given what Trump's trying to do to the steel industry, but more broadly to the country. And I'm very conscious of a couple of things. One is we got to make big changes to address the tariff crisis with the Americans. We got to stand up to them. We got to negotiate hard, and I can do that, and I've got a lot of experience in it. We got to make big changes, though, to address problems in housing, problems in affordability, problems with opioid crisis and other aspects. So I'm ready for that as well. And it's in many respects it's a very economic situation, right? We got to negotiate with the Americans or be hard. We got to open up new trade routes. We got to do these big changes domestically. So we use more of the hot rolled coil that's behind us here, which is actually literally, it is hot. It is hot in here. So we got to do more of that. We got to do it. But one of the other big differences is, why are we doing it? And I'm in this, and Liberal Party's here for people. And so we're keeping and reinvesting in $10 a day childcare. We're extending dental care to 8 million Canadians. That's 20% of our population. Pharmacare. And beyond, at CBC, for example, we're investing, you don't need it, but we're investing in local journalism as well, because we care about local communities. All of those things I just mentioned, Pierre Poilievre would eliminate. Mm-hmm. And so, a choice is strong economy, somebody who's got experience negotiating, managing crises, and doing it for the right reason.
You mentioned it today, and you've mentioned it throughout this campaign. And I think it strikes a lot of Canadians, this idea that the U.S. relationship has changed for good. Yeah. That it's not the same relationship. Like I said, you mentioned it again today. What do you mean by that, and what's the path forward?
Can you think back, and sort of looking at our gray hair around this table, we can all think back. Remember the free trade election back in the 80s, Brian Mulroney and John Turner. And that was the start of Canadians chose to have a free trade agreement with the U.S. And then we went through this long process, which runs out 40 years of kind of our economies becoming more and more integrated. So subsequent deals with them. So our auto sector was always there, but our steel sector and, all our manufacturing beyond. That process is now going in reverse. The president has slammed the brakes hard and wants to turn it around. The question is how much integration we want with the U.S., how much do we want to rely on trade with them, because it brings risks, right? We just saw the opportunities. It brings big risks. And everything from steel, where we're here, to, he's even putting tariffs on potash, on 70% of what he's getting there. So, and there's a big world out there, like-minded countries. I found in the month that I've been Prime Minister, the conversations with the Europeans, conversations in Asia, the desire to partner with Canada, trade with Canada, have security partnerships with Canada. We've already started one with France and with the UK, more broadly with Europe. We did a big agreement with Australia to help protect our Arctic. Yeah, let's focus more on that, and that changes the relationship with America. And if I can say one other thing, Michael, which is actually that wasn't a request. I was just warning you that I was going to say one other thing. But I think it's important to recognize that it's over, this change. If we sit here and think, oh well, it's just we're going to have a negotiation, it's going to go back to where it was before. No, because the president has taken these steps. But if you look at broader American business, you look at he's got a lot of support. This is the second time in several years that they've ripped up a trade deal with us, and the mindset has moved on, and we've got to look out for ourselves and take care of each other.
Because there's so much focus on President Trump and the tariffs and how do we respond to that. Is part of that then just saying we're going to not worry too much about President Trump and just focus on all the other countries around the world?
Part of it is that, Michael. I say this often. We can't change President Trump. He's got fixed ideas. He's 78 years old, and we can negotiate hard and get the best deal for Canada. What we can do, though, is first and foremost take care of ourselves here. So again, if I just draw on the setting here with Algoma, one of the things we're doing is saying, well, in our defense industry, we've been spending 80 cents on every dollar in America. Well, let's spend a lot more of that here. Let's build up our domestic military, for example, our shipbuilding. What kind of steel are we going to use? Well, let's use Algoma Steel. Let's start that now. Let's do that for our infrastructure. We're going to double the pace of home building in this country. That's our intention. We got a lot of things to do it. We want to use Canadian lumber. We want to use Canadian steel, Canadian, obviously, workers and technology. So make ourselves strong here at home. And that's why we've got this emphasis on building. That's good in and of itself. I often make this point, but I'm going to make it again. We can give ourselves far more than the Americans can ever take away. We can more than cover what Trump tariffs will do to us negatively. We can look, the net on this, to throw numbers around, is about $500 billion of investment we think we can get in the next 5 years on net. Last point, the stronger we are at home, the more we have that plan, the stronger we're going to be negotiating with them, because that allows us to walk away from the table when there's a bad deal. And, I know the guy, I know the way he negotiates. The first offer is going to be a bad deal, and we're going to walk away from it.
Let's move to dollars and cents. This week, your party released the full costed platform. It includes $130 billion in new spending, which will add $225 billion to the federal debt, and no timeline on a balanced budget over the next 4 years. I know if most families ran their household that way, it likely wouldn't end up well. So how do you justify that kind of spending?
So I like that you bring it into around the kitchen table, because this is the right way to think of it. This is a pretty radical change, or a dramatic change in how we're managing the nation's finances in the following respect. That we are shifting from the government spending on itself and the spending on the day-to-day expenses. So in other words, using the credit card to buy groceries, to pay the cable bill. We're shifting from that to taking out a mortgage to buy a home, or to build a home equity loan to build the extension in the house. Or better yet, the better analogy is to a small business that's buying it's a bakery. I'm going to have pizza after this, so buying a new pizza oven, right? That's a capital investment.
For sure.
So what we're doing is, over the next few years, we're going to shift so that the only thing we borrow for is when we're investing. The only thing and when I say we're investing, a lot of it is going to be promoting investment. Again, I'm going to draw on the setting. So you look at what Algoma is doing with their new electric arc furnace. That is the kind of investment that's going to make them way more competitive. It's going to reduce their emissions. It's going to be them for the long haul. The federal government is providing a bit of the capital for that to transform this company. we can do that in housing to get up to that 500,000 housing home starts a year. We can do it across the energy sector, particularly on the clean energy side. We've got to do it. Again, I'm kind of at my geography right here, looking out towards the port here. There's some port infrastructure investments we need here in Sault, whether it's in the Sault, whether it's in the Port of Montreal, Port of Vancouver, across the country. Those are the kind of investments we're going to be doing, because that builds the country for the long term. And to go back to the pizza example, yeah, I've got the new wood-fired oven, I guess, and I'm going to run that thing for 25 years. That's what we're talking about for the country. So the net of that is we're much stronger versus the Americans. We're not doing that much of it in overall dollar terms relative to the size of the government, but we'll put the country in a position where we're going to have the strongest economy in the G7.
You touched on housing, Mark. Sorry to make you keep turning. It's
right.
It's quite a setup we have here.
That's good.
Well, I'll be losing a couple pounds by the time it's done. You talked about the housing plan. The housing crisis has obviously been consistent around the country for a while. Lots of different governments, both provincial and federal, have talked about tackling the housing crisis, building supply. Your plan is really, as we've seen in the commercials, this idea to go back to a kind of a post-war plan where the government's sort of quarterbacking the building of houses. A $25 billion government agency is part of the platform. Can you sell that to us? Explain that to us.
Yeah, let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is that the housing plans up until now have been too timid. And a lot of the plans have focused on demand, right? Like, how do I get costs down, people's cost to buy a home, which, look, we're doing the same thing with respect to cutting GST on new homes and cutting development charges in half. And, it depends where you are across this great province, but the combination of those two on a new home is going to save you somewhere between $40,000 and $100,000 on the price of that home. So that's big money, okay? That's big money that shifts. But we really got to get supply up. And how are we going to kickstart supply? The government agency focuses, Build Canada Homes is what is going to be called. It focuses on doing the following. For deeply affordable housing, so we got a homelessness problem in this province, and we have an affordable housing problem in this province. So what are we going to do about it? Well, basically, government's going to build some of those homes, but we're going to build it in a way that helps kickstart an entire industry of a much more efficient way of building homes. Modular, prefabricated home, multi-unit housing as well. And we'll do it so that we're using Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, Canadian technology, obviously Canadian skilled trades. And so by doing that, we account for probably about 15% of that doubling of the amount. So something that's big enough to make a difference for the businesses. They know they're going to have a secure amount of demand, but it's really the private market that's going to drive the balance of that. In order for that to happen as well, we need to clean up a bunch of the regulations, work with a bunch of the municipalities, get costs down. So we're going to do all of that at once. The $25 billion, most of that money, in fact, all of that money, doesn't go to the government agency. It goes to private developers who are going to be building this out. Mm-hmm. So for those listening, look, if you're a developer on housing, this is going to be a great time. And we're going hard on this. And secondly, if you're younger and you want to get in the trades, listen, we are going to build this country for the next quarter century and plus. It is going to be a great time to be in the skilled trades. We're literally going to create hundreds of thousands of, not jobs, but careers. Last point, if I may, we're being thoughtful about this. At least I think we're being thoughtful, because what you also see in the platform, and we made this announcement a couple of weeks ago in the GTA, is we're going to pay for apprenticeships in the skilled trades. We're going to work with the unions for their apprenticeship programs. We're going to invest in the post-secondary institutions so they've got more spaces for apprenticeship. So we know that we've got the plan to double the rate of home building. We know that needs more Canadian lumber and steel. We're going to have requirements for that. We know that we're going to need more skilled trade for that. And so we're getting ready for all of that so it all fits together.
Another figure that from the platform that stuck out to me, Prime Minister, $28 billion in unspecified cost cuts from increased government productivity. What does that actually mean? Because when voters hear that, they get nervous, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a direct quote from the platform, if I may, Scott. I think that may have been some media spin, not yours, but someone else's. Look, we've got, if you look at what the government spends on government, if I can put it that way, it's about $140 billion, okay? Those numbers have been going up quite sharply over the course of the last 10 years. In other words, it's been growing at about 9% a year. The economy, for rule of thumb for people at home, is growing about half of that rate. Okay. We're stopping that. So the first thing you do when you're in a hole is you stop digging, right? So we're going to shift the rate of growth of that from 9 to 2. So in other words, we're going to grow it less rapidly than the economy. First point. How are we going to do that? We're going to cap the federal public service. So, and we're in a position where, if you look at the age structure of the public service, there's actually quite a few people who are coming off, so we're not unlikely to replace them, let's put it that way. So you get savings from that. Secondly, there are a series of programs that do the same thing. Some of them are incentives for R&D, incentives for investment, and they, in some cases, work at cross purposes. There's several billions of dollars that can be saved in rationalizing those. Thirdly, there is a fair bit of spending on consultants. It's mischaracterized by some political parties, but there's definite savings that will be done there. We're going to bear down on that. And then thirdly, or fourthly, there's sort of flipping the approach around this spending so that it's much more focused on results as opposed to dollars in. And we'll do a comprehensive program review on that. I feel, having been involved in what's called program reviews in the past under both Paul Martin when he was Prime Minister and Stephen Harper when he was Prime Minister, late great Jim Flaherty when he was Finance Minister. I know how these processes work. We are overdue for them. And so the combination of that gets to quite a modest, prudent is a better way to put it. It's a prudent assumption in there. We're going to find those savings. What we haven't done in our platform, because again, this is what you do. This is just the right way to do it. We have given ourselves no credit. You know, you mentioned that $100 billion. That investment is going to drive growth. We've given ourselves no credit for that growth. If we gave ourselves credit for that growth, you know, the numbers shift dramatically positively and go. But that's the right way to do it. You don't. You prepare for the worst situation and then you get surprised on the upside.
Let's shift to the carbon tax. It continues to be a major concern for a lot of Canadians. After winning the leadership, you canceled the consumer carbon tax. Can you confirm that the tax is dead for good?
Of course.
If you win
Why
this
would
election?
I cancel it and change it? Like it's the most desperate argument. I did say to Pierre Poilievre on the debate. I mean, during the debate, we're deep in the debate, and it's just in this and carbon tax that. I'm like, listen, I know you've been campaigning for 3 years and Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax, but they're both gone. Like, look, dude, they're gone. It's over. You got to get a new focus. And so the idea, we might as well just say, well, look, Justin Trudeau's going to come back in the carbon tax. No, he's not. He's not coming back. And the carbon tax is gone. And look, it's gone. We did it on day one. People are getting their last rebate checks this week. And then what we're doing, this is an important point. Pierre Poilievre always denied this, that people were getting rebates, but 70% of the people in Ontario came out net ahead of the rebate check and what they were paying on average on the carbon tax. And so in getting rid of the carbon tax, well, then the rebate goes away. And so to make sure that people are made whole, we're cutting we're cutting taxes for everybody who pays taxes, and that'll be an average of up to $825 a family. Yeah.
Well, if you bring back the carbon tax, we'll always have that clip to play.
There is no way. There is no way that is going to happen.
All right, let's ask about the industrial carbon tax then,
yes.
Right? This is obviously an issue you're passionate about carbon emissions, about dealing with climate change. And we're sitting at Algoma Steel, a company that is doing this massive shift to electric arc furnace steel making. How do you defend the industrial carbon tax to Canadians who are wondering, well, how are we at a time when industry is struggling, they're going to be also hit with a carbon tax on the bottom line?
Well, let's a couple of things. So what's happening with Algoma Steel is they're about to get the benefit of all the investment that they've been doing. So that their carbon emissions are going to fall almost 70%, if not more, as a result of this process. And so they all of a sudden become in a position where they're quite advantaged. So if we took away the carbon tax, then they'd be like, wait a minute, we just made this massive investment and you didn't do it. That's first point. Second is, look, we're diversifying away from the Americans. And guess what? The countries we're diversifying to care about this. We will not have access to the European market. We will not have access to the UK market and increasingly major Asian markets unless we are getting our emissions down. And then the third point is, guess what? The Americans change their mind every once in a while. And, a couple months ago, they cared a lot about this issue. Now, apparently, they don't care about it. They're going to care about it again. And we are going to put ourselves in a position where we leapfrog the Americans with respect to carbon competitiveness. Yeah. And that is good for Canada long term. I mean, obviously, it's good for the planet, but it's good for Canada long term.
You're a busy man, Mark, so I know you have to run.
I'm getting the hook?
I think so. 2 quick questions.
Okay.
I'll ask one of them. Obviously, we talked about local journalists. We talked about media industry. Bill C-18, the Liberal bill from 2 years ago, forced big tech to compensate media companies for having their links on Facebook. It was something a company like ours at Village Media didn't agree with because we were worried about what was going to happen, which is what did happen. Meta blocked all our content on Facebook and Instagram. Is this something your government, if elected, would revisit? Because really, what's left on Facebook? Yes. There's no legitimate news.
I know. I hear you. I think it has. There's likely a need to revisit it. Yes, that's my personal opinion. I intend to run a government, a cabinet government. So my view is not absolute in this regard. And there's not a commitment, to be absolutely clear. There's no commitment on our platform or anything like that. But I think the viability of the media ecosystem. God, that's quite a mouthful. Making sure the local media is profitable and media across is in the interest of the country.
Thank you.
Okay, last month you just turned 60.
Yes,
you're a wealthy man.
Thanks.
You've got
Thanks for bringing that.
You're welcome. I'm almost there. A wealth of experience. You could enjoy, the next chapter of your life doing virtually anything. Why politics? There must be a beer league out there that could use a goalie.
Why? Look, I've been very fortunate in my life. I mean, I did come from, I came from the Northwest Territories, grew up in Edmonton. My parents were teachers, but Canada gave me the opportunities I've had. They literally paid for my university scholarship to Harvard and graduate school and others, and I've always had a sense of responsibility to give back. I do care a lot about these issues, and I felt, and your question touched not a nerve, but touched the point, which is, at Christmas over the holidays, I saw that this was a possibility, and there was a part of me that was, what, I've done my service, and I should just. But the scale of the crisis that was actual but potential. I felt, I've got the experience that's relevant here, and I should stand up. Canadians could decide, no, thank you, and I hope they don't. By the way, on March 1st, or sorry, April 28th. I don't know, March 1st.
It's easy to lose track of time.
I'm losing track of time. April 28th on Monday. But I felt duty to come out and stand up, and I have to say, given the scale of both the scale of the attacks on our country, what's at stake, but finally and fundamentally positively, the way Canadians are coming together across Ontario, across this country, for each other, standing up for each other. I'm glad that I'm part of that, and I hope to be able to help lead that.
All right, this has been a wonderful chat. We could sit here and do this all day. 2 quick things before you go. Good luck to your Oilers tonight. They're back at home, down 2. Hopefully they can turn it around, and good luck on Monday.
Thank you very much.
Thank
on
you.
both counts.
Thank you, Mark.
That was great.
That was fantastic.
That was terrific.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.